I could tell you my solution if you want. I could jump to that.
Okay,
Or
we could start there. We could go with what's your solution?
my solution, which I think any normal person, if they weren't coming into this with nationalistic brainwashing from the beginning, my solution is very simple. Stop moving, stop ethnically cleansing people. No one has to move anymore.
Okay.
Okay. People moved, but now they were born in a certain country. So, first of all, those countries should offer them citizenship. So, if you're a Palestinian refugee, so called refugee, but actually it's your grandfather who was the refugee and you're born in Lebanon, then Lebanon should offer you citizenship. Syria
Right.
should offer you citizenship if you were born there. Jordan
Right.
should offer you citizenship. Now, when it comes to the West Bank, Jordan would simply annex the Arab cities like Ramallah, like Tulkarm, just Jenin, everything that there's literally not a single Jew there. So, what good does it do for Israel to annex them? But I think that Jordan should annex them like it had before. And I also think that the 500,000 Jews who lived in the West Bank now, that's only a problem for the Palestinian state. It's not a problem for Jordan either. So Israel should annex the Jewish cities. Again, there's not a single Arab there. So it's very simple. No one has to move. Everyone gets citizenship, jobs, and then a real country like Jordan or Israel that have peace agreements with each other already since the 90s can then discuss things like border crossings and vetted, just like the Eurozone or how we have in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. People can move freely if they're vetted and they're not terrorists. It's super simple. And the only thing
Okay.
that is in the way is the Palestinian state project.
Okay. So what would you, so before I kind of, because I definitely don't agree with that, and I want to get into that, but what would you do before that? What would you do with Gaza?
Gaza is, it's a bit more difficult because what should have been done in the 2014 is what the Israeli government wanted to do, but somehow didn't do because of Netanyahu and everything.
Hmm.
Gaza is run by Hamas, and I can get into it, but Hamas and the PLO are not good governments. Okay,
Sure.
they are terrorist organizations according to
Right.
many. Okay, according to the UN and many countries. So instead of trying to reform a terrorist organization and say, okay, now they're finally going to be good governors, they're going to take care of the aquifer and the water infrastructure, and they're going to attract investment like the sheiks of Dubai. Okay,
Hmm.
instead of that, um, I do think there should have been an international coalition, just like after 9/11, when the US didn't just go in alone. We have the most powerful army, but we took a coalition. We invoked NATO Article 5, the only time it was ever invoked, and we went into Afghanistan as a coalition. And
Hmm.
Macron from France offered it this time to Netanyahu, and the only guy who accepted it was President Herzog of Israel. That guy is kind of smart. He accepted Macron's offer. He said, sure, you fought ISIS, let's go in together. But everyone else in the Israeli leadership was like, no, we'll do this all alone. And so that's why they're pariahs now. And so, like, they should have made a coalition with the other countries, which, by the way, Egypt also doesn't like Hamas, and like they are cooperating with Israel. Every one of Israel's neighbors in the south, like Jordan, Israel, is already has a peace agreement with them. So why not use the peaceful framework? Why try to create peace with someone who hates you? So yeah, I would say Gaza needs to be Hamas needs to be disarmed by a coalition that probably should have included France and many of the Arab leaders that participated in Cairo literally a week later, almost begging Israel, like, give them a plan, like, do something, like the king of Jordan, everybody. And Israel is like, now we're just going to go it alone, which I think was very, very silly and stupid.
Yeah. Okay. So the problem with the West Bank, with this idea, is that right now the Palestinian controlled like Area A. So just so the people watching, after the Oslo Accords, West Bank was divided up into three different areas: Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A is totally that's all Palestinians living in these areas, controlled by the PLO. But there is still Israeli presence. There's still IDF presence in these areas, but they're not technically supposed to be controlling those areas. Area B is supposed to be joint controlled areas between with Israel and the PLO. They're supposed to like patrol these. They're usually kind of the outskirts of these areas. So you've got the city centers, Area A, and then right when you get to like the outskirts, that would be considered Area B. And there's supposed to be that joint control there. And then Area C is all Israeli controlled. So that's where the checkpoints are. That's where, that's where a lot of the settlements are, right? the Israeli settlements. The area A is like 11% of the West Bank. It's really small. So when you're talking about, and you're talking about, areas that are, you have to drive through areas B and C to get to all the various areas of all the area A's. It's not like they're all in one spot and it could be one chunk of land that Jordan annexes in this plan. You're talking about, it would be like cutting up the United States where Jordan comes in and says, all right, we're going to control Portland, Oregon, and Salt Lake City, and Austin, Texas, and New York, and like all over. And in the middle is considered the United States, right? And the rest is considered some other foreign country. I mean, it's like not really feasible to have a country absorb these random spots all around.
Well, I'll push back on that because I think
Okay.
this is where we need to get past the statist mentality. Okay, that there has to be a jurisdiction that's like contiguous and there's one country, monopoly of force. Okay, there's many institutions in the world that can interoperate, and they have. I'll give you some examples. Police forces regularly have jurisdictions in cities or whatever. Okay, banks. There's constantly like fraud, departments, and they figure out, like insurance companies figure out who hit what car. You don't need violence for any of this. Okay, every day there's thousands of cases. They're figured out on a basis of civil law, on the basis of so the idea that, oh, we can't. Jordan, remember, these people had Jordanian citizenship until
Right.
1988. And so it's not like impossible to imagine that Jordan could give it back to them. And Jordan and Israel could cooperate on water rights, on jobs, on movement. What we need to do is de-radicalize people, but they're not going to get de-radicalized if they're living under what is essentially reformed terrorist organization. The PLO became the Palestinian Authority. Everyone agrees it's authoritarian. Wikipedia says it's authoritarian. There's no elections, right? And similarly, Hamas. Okay. Yeah, there are elections on the bottom, but there's never elections for like changing the whole thing. If there were elections, then people would just choose Hamas. And then you would actually have to deal with the reality that they want Jews out. So I'm saying the only way for what you said is to go in there and say, look, whatever you guys want, this is what's going to happen. We're going to use real states that have real peace frameworks for years, for decades. And they kind of like each other, these states, and they work together. And by the way, the governments of these states are also in precarious positions, like Al-Sisi in Egypt or the King of Jordan, right? Abdullah, who I personally played for in 1996. So I think that we should let these moderates rule just like Jordan did in 1949 at Jericho Conference. All the Palestinian notables said, sure, rule us, that's fine. So what's wrong with that? Why do we
But
need?
because what
Yeah,
you're talking about is giving all of the land except for that 11% to Israel. So they would essentially annex the entire West Bank, except there would be reservations. There would be native reservations spread out throughout the West Bank that are not administered by Israel, but administered by Jordan. I mean, that's what you're proposing is native reservations. So what you're saying, and that is very similar when you're saying that this, uh, because really, if you're not going to carve out a contiguous amount of land for a group of people to live on, then you are talking about Indian reservations. We've done that here in the United States. Yes, that is what that is.
well,
There's
the reason
nothing,
it's not, may I say the reason
that's
it's
what it is.
not? Yeah, but the reason it wouldn't be there is because they would actually be part of Jordan. They would have citizenship in Jordan.
Right. So they're native reservations for under Jordanian control, which is also kind of insane because at least here in the United States, we don't say our native reservations are controlled by Mexico. We don't say like, well, there's, let the Mexicans deal with them because once this land what used to be Mexico, many of the native reservations in the United States are currently inland. Like I'm in California, it used to be Mexico, right?
There you go.
So we don't say like the native reservations in the United States are administered by Mexico. They're technically Mexican territory. The rest is the United States. That's insane because for one, we control all of the water. We have to, as a matter of national security, we have to
That's the
control
statist
our
mentality there.
airspace. It
No
doesn't, but
co yeah.
it doesn't, like, of course, we need to control our borders. We have to have safe borders. We're going to control our airspace. We're going to control the water supply. We're going to
Control,
control the
control.
telecommunications.
Who is we?
Yeah, but
Who
you
is
have
we?
to, who's going to develop all of that? Would we allow, as the United States of America, would we allow Mexico to come in and actually administer defense for these native tribes?
First
Would
of
we
all, we
allow them
cooperate.
to?
Sorry, I just want to say we do cooperate all the time with Canada, with Mexico. We have drug gangs that they try to cooperate on. But I will tell you this: the U.S. straight up stole the land from Mexico 130 years ago.
Well, and then the US paid for it. I mean, and by the way,
Oh,
when the
nice.
US came in, when the US and when there was the American-Mexican War, and America ended up gaining like a huge amount of Mexico. I mean, all of this land was Mexico, and I think this was actually 2/3 of Mexican land that was taken from Mexico. So they got shrunken down quite a bit. But after that war, we immediately gave all of the Mexicans who were living here citizenship, American citizenship. Their land rights were protected. We didn't deport them down to Mexico and say, you can no longer live here. This is for
No,
Americans.
we did. That
We
was
said,
called
guess what?
Operation Wetback. We did do that for 2 million people, but put that aside. We did do that.
And that was wrong. We now look back at that and say that was wrong. We don't look back at that and say, yeah, we did it, so it's no big deal. But the natives also, when we look at Native American reservations here in the United States, natives are not stuck in those reservations. They can leave and they can live anywhere in the United States that they want to. They are American citizens. They're also citizens of their tribal lands. They are given these tribal lands that they are theoretically, although we definitely don't always adhere to our treaties with the natives, theoretically, they're supposed to be able to control and operate their land, but they still are very reliant on U.S. We control the airspace, we control
They're
the
very
water, we
poor.
control the borders, and they're poor. But those people don't have to live there. They're not stuck there. They can live anywhere they want in the United States. My sister and my brother are have native heritage. So, they can live anywhere. They're not
They
stuck on
can, but the rates
reservations.
of depression and suicide are among the highest. And listen,
Right, of course. Right.
they've lost a lot of their heritage.
They have.
Listen, and so the United
So
States
then
is a
why would
huge.
you want to impose that on the Palestinian people?
Oh
And
no,
then also
I
put
want the
them in a
opposite.
situation where Jordan would be somehow granted the ability to administer inside of Israel, essentially, these native reservations inside of Israel. When if you're going to stick these people in a reservation, it should absolutely be incumbent upon Israel to administer to these people and give them citizenship and allow them to leave those native areas.
It is not. They are not reservations. They are entire cities. Okay, so I'm talking
Well, what is
about.
it? I mean, native land is like that.
Right. Well, let me show you some maps which I have
Okay.
prepared, which I think are important to understand. First of all, the United States is a huge country. It's a very rich country, and even with all that, the reservations are poor, depressed, and there's high rates of suicide. And
Right.
I'm not talking about sticking people into bantustans and reservations. Okay, I'm not talking about the next apartheid. I am saying the opposite. I'm saying give people a choice, offer them Jordanian citizenship. It's only in some
Right, but our
statist.
natives, but what will that change? Because natives here have American citizenship. So they're not, I mean,
That's
even if they're
complete.
poor and there's depression and there's like alcoholism in native
Yeah.
reservations, they're still not stuck there. They can leave. They can get out of the native, they're free to go. They're free to go
Okay.
anywhere. They're American
Here's a huge
citizens.
difference. So first of all, I think we both agreed on this that one of the biggest problems for Palestinians is that they're stateless. Okay.
Right. They're
We don't have.
stateless people. Right.
They're stateless people.
And
Just like
I want to, and this is an important point to make. I just want to make this point real quick. We live in a world where our citizenship is the foundation of our rights. I'm an American, so therefore I am granted rights because I'm an American. Our nationality grants us various different rights depending on our nationality. And the Palestinian people are stateless. Israel won't give them Israeli citizenship, even though they're living on that land. And so they're
and
just there without state. They don't have any ability to function. They're just a stateless people, which means that they don't have any rights, which is why there's one of the reasons why they're so oppressed.
so let's start there because that's the whole point. You've said it, and I totally agree. In this statist world that we live in, you need to belong to a state to have someone have your back, and that
Yeah.
should be okay. So we agree on that. But notice when you
Right,
said the
but
Palestinians,
what you're saying
yeah,
is you want to give citizenship to a group of people living on inside of Israel. Because if you're going to annex the
not
entire
Israel.
West Bank, it would be
Nobody.
Israel. They're surrounded by Israel, so they're enclaves inside of Israel. And instead of being granted Israeli citizenship, allowing them to leave freely those enclaves and live amongst everybody and thrive amongst everybody, you're wanting to give them citizenship for a country that doesn't even border that particular enclave. They're surrounded by Israel. They're not next to Jordan where they can easily
That's
flow
fine.
every day into Jordan.
People want to do that with Gaza. Russia's done that with Kaliningrad. Okay, there's places
but
where
Kaliningrad is like a contiguous piece of land that,
no,
yes, it is surrounded by the rest of Europe. It is still a piece of land. I mean, that's like, the United States having, I don't know, Guam or something. It's like, it's
yeah,
kind of an island on its own, but it's not cities all peppered around. You're talking about a peppering of
that's what
100 little
that's fine. People
towns and
live on
villages.
So people live on islands all the time. The Philippines were taken over by the U.S. before they were part of the Spanish Empire.
No,
But
Greg, here's the problem with this.
no,
Wait, let me just point so that you can counter this. When you're talking, so if you're going to have like I said, we live in a world where our citizenship is the foundation of our human rights. If you're going to give them Jordanian citizenship, which is going to be the foundation for their rights,
in the West Bank
but
only.
in order,
Yeah.
in the West Bank, but for them to then travel to go visit grandma, so like Bethlehem, and they want to go to visit in Nablus or whatever, they traveling around, they have to go through foreign territory, Israel, to get there, areas that they don't have any rights because they're not Israeli citizens. That's insane.